Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, known worldwide as the father of the nation in India, became a symbol of peace and non-violent resistance. His round glasses and simple dhoti are instantly recognizable, representing his philosophy of satyagraha, or truth force. Gandhi's leadership transformed the Indian National Congress from an elite club into a mass movement. He traveled across India, connecting with peasants and workers, making their struggles his own. The Salt March of 1930 was a turning point, mobilizing thousands in a simple act of civil disobedience that shook the British Empire. Gandhi's vision of Swaraj, self-rule, went beyond political freedom. It was about self-reliance and building a just society. He promoted khadi, or hand-spun cloth, to encourage economic independence and envisioned self-sufficient village republics. His approach gave the freedom struggle a moral and spiritual dimension, inspiring admiration worldwide. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. drew inspiration from Gandhi's methods. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize multiple times, and his life became his message. Gandhi lived simply, ate frugally, and dedicated himself to his cause. This image of the selfless spiritual leader is celebrated in books, films, and statues. But the story of Gandhi is more complex than the saintly image we remember. His legacy is both inspiring and deeply complicated. To understand Gandhi, we must look beyond the myth. Before he was the Mahatma, Gandhi was a young lawyer in South Africa, arriving in 1893 seeking opportunity. There, he faced harsh racial discrimination, most famously, being thrown off a train for sitting in first class. This experience ignited his fight against injustice and shaped his political philosophy. Gandhi organized the Indian community, founded the Natal Indian Congress, and started the newspaper Indian Opinion. In South Africa, he first experimented with satyagraha, non-violent protest, against discriminatory laws. He and his followers willingly went to jail, showing they would not be cowed by the state. Gandhi's activism focused on improving the status of Indians within the British Empire, not on universal equality. He fought the indentured labor system and negotiated with the South African government. By 1914, Gandhi returned to India a transformed man, no longer a shy lawyer, but a confident political organizer. South Africa was the crucible where he tested his ideas and learned to mobilize people. He mastered negotiation, public protest, and the use of media. These lessons would prove invaluable in his later struggle against the British Raj. Gandhi's leadership was forged in adversity, preparing him for the challenges ahead. The tools he developed in South Africa would shape the destiny of India. Gandhi's fight against discrimination in South Africa is celebrated, but his early writings reveal troubling views. He advocated for better treatment of Indians, but often at the expense of black Africans. Gandhi used derogatory terms for black Africans and argued that Indians were from a superior civilization. He protested Indians being grouped with the native population, seeking to elevate their status within the colonial hierarchy. Gandhi's focus was on moving Indians up the ladder, not dismantling the system of racial oppression. These views reflected the prejudices of his era, but they also reinforced colonial racism. Over time, Gandhi's perspective evolved. He later spoke of unity among all oppressed people. However, he never fully renounced his earlier statements, leaving a stain on his legacy. In recent years, protests have led to the removal of Gandhi statues in parts of Africa. Activists argue it's wrong to celebrate a man who held such views about black Africans. This controversy forces us to confront the flaws in even our greatest heroes. Gandhi's legacy is complicated by these uncomfortable truths. Understanding him means facing both his achievements and his prejudices. Gandhi's stance on the caste system was as complex as his views on race. He condemned untouchability, calling it a blot on Hinduism, and campaigned for its abolition. Gandhi renamed the untouchables Harijans and opened his ashrams to all castes. Yet, he distinguished between caste and the fourfold Varna system, believing in an idealized, non-hierarchical version. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, himself from an untouchable community, demanded the complete annihilation of caste. Gandhi's approach was reformist, not revolutionary. He sought to purify, not destroy the system. The 1932 clash over separate electorates for untouchables led to the Pune Pact, a bitter compromise for Ambedkar. Critics argue Gandhi's defense of Varna helped preserve caste hierarchy. While he fought untouchability, he did not attack the root cause, the religious and social structure of caste. Ambedkar saw Gandhi's methods as emotional blackmail, sacrificing the rights of the oppressed for Hindu unity. This episode remains a major point of criticism against Gandhi. His legacy on caste is one of reform, not radical change. The debate over his approach continues to shape India's struggle with caste today. Gandhi brought millions of Indian women into public life, encouraging them to join the freedom struggle. He praised their strength and saw their participation as essential for the movement's moral force. This was revolutionary in a patriarchal society, giving women new agency. Yet, Gandhi's views on women were deeply traditional. He idealized them as symbols of purity and sacrifice. He believed their primary duty was to home and family, seeing their public role as an extension of domestic life. Gandhi's views on sexuality were conservative. He saw chastity as a woman's greatest virtue. He placed the burden of sexual purity on women, rather than challenging male aggression. His ideal relationship between men and women was one of brother and sister, free from desire. Modern feminists argue Gandhi reinforced traditional gender roles, even as he empowered women. He brought women into politics, but on his own terms, within a patriarchal framework. Gandhi's vision for women's liberation was limited by his traditionalist worldview. His legacy on gender is both empowering and problematic. Gandhi's personal experiments with brahmacharya, or celibacy, remain among the most controversial aspects of his life. He believed celibacy would give him spiritual and political power, leading him to test his self-control in extreme ways. In his later years, Gandhi slept naked with young women, including his grandnieces, to test his resolve. He saw this as a spiritual practice, but it caused distress among his followers and led to resignations. Critics argue these experiments were inappropriate and damaging, especially given the power imbalance. Today, many see his actions as a form of psychological and emotional abuse, regardless of intent. The consent of the women involved is questioned, given Gandhi's authority. This aspect of his life reveals a man driven by spiritual obsession, sometimes at the expense of others' well-being. Gandhi's search for self-mastery left a troubling legacy. Gandhi's philosophy of non-violent resistance, or satyagraha, was his greatest gift to the world. The Salt March and Quit India movement showed the power of peaceful protest, winning global sympathy and weakening British resolve. Non-violence required immense discipline and worked partly because the British cared about their image. However, some Indian revolutionaries like Subhas Chandra Bose believed armed struggle was necessary. Gandhi's absolute pacifism drew criticism, especially during World War II. He refused to support the British war effort against Nazi Germany, even writing to Hitler as "dear friend." Critics like George Orwell argued Gandhi's methods would fail against totalitarian regimes. This raises a key question. Is non-violence universally effective, or does it depend on the opponent? Gandhi's satyagraha was powerful in India, but its limitations remain debated. His legacy is both inspiring and controversial. Gandhi's final years were marked by sorrow and a sense of failure. He dreamed of a united India where Hindus and Muslims lived in peace, but the demand for Pakistan led to partition. Gandhi opposed partition, calling it the vivisection of the motherland, and walked through riot-torn villages pleading for peace. He fasted to shame the perpetrators of violence, risking his life to stop communal hatred. Despite his efforts, partition in 1947 unleashed horrific violence. Millions were killed or displaced. Gandhi refused to celebrate independence, spending the day fasting and praying in Calcutta. The freedom he fought for arrived soaked in blood, negating his ideals. While others celebrated, Gandhi was in the midst of violence, a lonely figure pleading for sanity. His presence helped calm Calcutta, but he could not stop the larger tragedy. In January 1948, Gandhi was assassinated by a Hindu extremist who blamed him for being too sympathetic to Muslims. Gandhi died a martyr for Hindu-Muslim unity, a cause he could not achieve. His death marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of his legend. The tragedy of partition remains a dark shadow over his legacy. Gandhi's final days were his most heartbreaking, yet perhaps his most courageous. His struggle for unity remains unfinished. Today, Gandhi's legacy is more complex and contested than ever. He is no longer seen as a simple saint, but as a man of contradictions, brilliant, flawed, and deeply human. His achievements in leading India to freedom through non-violence are undeniable. Yet, his early racism, conservative views on caste and gender, and controversial personal practices cannot be ignored. Gandhi was a champion of the oppressed who held prejudiced views, a promoter of women who reinforced patriarchy, a political leader driven by spiritual quests. To understand Gandhi, we must resist both worship and dismissal. He grew and evolved, but never fully escaped the prejudices of his time. Acknowledging his flaws gives us a more honest picture of a complex figure. The debate over his legacy forces us to think critically about our heroes and our history. Gandhi's true legacy may lie in the questions he forces us to ask about justice, equality, and the nature of leadership. His imperfect journey remains a powerful story for our own imperfect times.